Every now and then, Malayalam Cinema produces a film that makes me go, how? How do you do this every single time? And this week, I saw two such films. Two completely opposite films in spirit, but similar in impact on the big screen and the inner self. But first, roll that intro. The first film I wanted to talk about was Thallumaala on Netflix. Directed by Khalid Rahman, written by Mohsin Parari and Ashraf Hamza. During my college years, I watched this film that changed everything I knew about cinema. This movie made me think, so you can do even this in movies? That movie was Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where the main character Scott falls for this girl called Ramona Flowers, but in order for both of them to have a happy ending, no pun intended, Scott has to defeat 7 of her evil ex-boyfriends in a series of different fights, just like the levels of a video game. Though the film flopped at the box office when it released, today the film is a cult classic, mainly because of its insane visual storytelling, fueled by its comic book style editing. When I watched it for the first time, I thought to myself, man, why can't we make something like this in India? And at one point, I even wrote a 30-minute script in that similar Scott Pilgrim style, but it never really took off. But 12 years later, after that film released, Khalid Rahman and his team made my unrealized dream come true. Thallumaala is very similar to Scott Pilgrim in more ways than one. Firstly, from the story standpoint, there's no real story here. Even here, we have a central character being part of a series of fights, staying true to the title Thallumaala, which literally means chain of fights. But there are two main differences with this film. Firstly, the non-linear narrative. It's like you have this huge jigsaw puzzle with thousands of pieces and you're trying to solve it, and you've completed around like 75% of it, and then out of nowhere, someone comes and knocks it over. And now you have to start it all over again. It's extremely frustrating, but you don't mind it because you're having so much fun. Secondly, the cultural context. Toxic masculinity and male ego is a trait that we see all around us in school, in college, at work, on the road, maybe even within us. As men, a lot of us find it really difficult to control our anger, and we don't realize when the switch goes off. We get into fights without ever thinking of consequences. And we've seen this aspect represented in so many of our films like Arjun Reddy and Kabir Singh, Iraivi, or even another Tovino Thomas film which was Kala. But all these are rather serious representations. But here, they've taken the simple thread of men are stupid, added some superb action set pieces and stunt choreography, mind-bending camera angles, inventive sound design, some really cool costume design, and as the main ingredient, trippy as editing. And then they've taken all of this, added it into a pressure cooker, turned up the heat, and then just let it explode. What we get in the end is this juicy, this delicious, full of surprises dish that you're either gonna love or absolutely hate. It's unbelievable how fresh this film looks and feels. Especially there's a sequence in which Tovino's character is supposed to go out on a date, and before that, the way they show him choosing his hairstyle and his outfit is just... But beyond the style, beyond all the aesthetic aspects of the film, which really goes to a whole new gear in the theater fight sequence, which everyone's raving about right now, my absolute favorite part of the film is actually the final act of the film. There's this wedding sequence. This entire sequence where style takes a backseat and screenplay takes the steering wheel. And the way they've crafted this sequence, it's like the perfect example of Alfred Hitchcock's bomb theory, in which he imagines a scene where there are 4 people talking around a table. They're talking about maybe baseball or something, and underneath the table they show a time bomb which only the audience knows about, and it's about to explode. This wedding sequence feels exactly as tense as that, but except here, the bomb is actually the underlying ego, the tension, the awkwardness, the anger between 2 different sets of characters. And you know all of this is going to bubble up and explode at some point, but how? That's what makes it so much fun. At every point of this film, I thought to myself that if the film looks so much fun, imagine how it would be to actually be on that film set, to actually make this film. I think Thallumaala is a great lesson to any filmmaker who wants to make commercial cinema. You don't need an insane budget. You don't need the biggest stars in the world. You don't even need a story in this case. All you need is the desire to give the audience a fun, fresh experience. And if you give them that, they will celebrate it. Which is why this film, while it was made on a budget of just around 20 crores, it's grossed more than 70 crores at the Malayalam box office already. And it's also become the 9th highest grossing Malayalam film of all time. And just want to take a moment to mention Shine Tom Chacko here. He's such a chameleon of an actor. He's so convincing. Every single time he appears on the screen, even you feel like starting a fight. The second film I wanted to talk about, one of my favorite films of the year easily, is Nna Thaan Case Kodu on Disney Plus Hotstar. Written and directed by Ratish Balakrishnan Poduval. Maybe a lot of you might remember this video from 2019. There's an astronaut walking on what looks like the craters of the moon's surface, but when you zoom out, you see an auto rickshaw going by and you realize that this isn't some moon mission, but a pothole-filled street in Bangalore. And just like Thallumaala was a cousin of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Nna Thaan Case Kodu is a soul sister of this viral video in two ways. Firstly, the story itself. On the surface, Nna Thaan Case Kodu is just about a thief. At first glance, you might actually feel like you're watching Thondi Mudalum Driksashiyam, which had Fahad Fasil in the lead. Similarly, this film starts off by following a reformed thief called Rajivan, who's played by Kunchako Boban, who on a very strange night gets bitten by two guard dogs at an MLA's house, which he has allegedly broken in to steal. He gets caught, he gets convicted, and this bizarre case is what you think that the film is about. But when you zoom out, like a reverse domino effect, you see that the bigger picture is actually something else, and how the actual story is about our society as a whole, and how a single pothole has so many characters, so many transactions between those characters, so many causes and so many effects on the same society, to prove that everything and everyone is connected. Number 2. The philosophy and treatment. When we as Indians are riding or driving through a street which has very bad roads, which is full of potholes, we have three possible reactions. Number 1, we get angry, we abuse, and then we go somewhere else and take that anger on something or someone else. Number 2, we make jokes about how bad the roads are. Or number 3, we wait for someone to fix those roads, no matter how long it takes, even though we have paid our hard-earned money to the government as tax. And the combination of all of these three is the underlying philosophy of Nna Thaan Case Kodu. It taps into the anger and the helplessness of the common man, uses satire to show that helplessness, and by the end, it drives home this beautiful point that Kamal Haasan made on stage at an event.
If you don't affect politics, politics will affect you.
And mind you, this is not a film about politics, it's not necessarily a political film, but it makes us realize a simple fact. Everything is political. To give you an example, the story and the case in the film takes place over a period of 2 years, like more than 2 years. And to show the passage of time, at each time break, along with the date, they also display the rising price of petrol. And this is such a simple but such an impactful political statement. And it holds a mirror to our face and asks us, what do you want to get angry about today? The latest Bollywood film or some Bollywood star that Twitter or some news channel has told you to be angry about? Or something that is actually affecting your life, your finances, your family, and your livelihood? 2 fun facts I discovered about the film. Number 1, the director actually shot the rehearsal of the film entirely to see how it plays out, and then made tweaks based on the reception that it got, and then shot the entire film all over again. And secondly, more than 90% of the actors are fresh faces. Most of them have never acted in front of a camera before. It makes you feel like all of this is happening around you when you're looking at all of these real faces having completely natural expressions and reactions. Especially that magistrate at the court who feels like some uncle from your family, who actually ends up giving such an effortlessly good performance that you just feel like giving all the awards that you have to him. What I also really loved was Gayatri's character. She plays Devi, who is Rajivan's pregnant girlfriend. I loved their chemistry, I loved their dynamics, and how the makers chose not to show them as a married couple, even while setting it in like the small town, just showing them as a strong unit fighting for justice together. This is really progressive for an Indian film. What's also lovely is that Devi is a Tamil character who just strictly speaks her mother tongue, which is Tamil, and every other character in the film speaks Malayalam. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this can happen only in a Malayalam film. I've spoken about this before, but I absolutely loved Android Kunjappan by the same director, a film which uses a Japanese robot to unravel the prejudices of our culture. And this film, Nna Thaan Case Kodu, is easily one of my favorite films of the year because through the court case, it kept me on the edge of my sofa, it kept me deeply invested in the main character and his cause, and it made me feel that anger, that helplessness of being part of this society, and I prayed so badly for him to win and also for this film to win. I was hoping a lot of people watched this film in the theatre. Thankfully, it performed really well not only in Kerala but also at centres like Delhi. And those were two Malayalam films that absolutely blew my mind this week. I hope you watched it. If you have, tell me your thoughts on it. If you haven't, please go check it out. I'm sure you're going to have a great experience. But for now, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next Friday. Wow.